looking for? What do you expect to see? Maybe what do you want to see come out of this?
Yeah, the biggest thing for members like myself on the Weaponization Committee and also being a lawyer is you want to see the indictment. They haven't made that public yet. What are the 34 counts that he's been charged with? What evidence are they using to proffer these charges? Those are the things that I think a lot of us are curious about, because it's really hard to comment about things when the indictment's been sealed and isn't going to be released until he's arraigned today. So those are things that I think a lot of people will dig into once those indictment is released to the public.
How much does this sort of embolden other local prosecutors to now go after elected officials, former elected officials, for any wrongdoing that they may find?
I mean, think about where we sit today. We know for a fact, because we have evidence, thanks to Hunter Biden's laptop, of all the many crimes that Hunter Biden has committed and evidence of those crimes. And the FBI has had that laptop for years and done absolutely nothing about it. We have a completely upside down political system right now that is politicized, where you have the Democrats going after Trump in a like 80% Democratic area with a Soros-funded Democratic AG going after the former president, which has never happened in the history of our country, and they're just not following the rule of law. The statutes of limitations has told they're basically making federal law where there's not, which is why they probably kept the indictment sealed for people like me not to criticize it. But you don't have a crime that was being committed, and then you have evidence of crimes being committed by the current president's son, and nothing's happening to them. Yeah. I think people like myself are very frustrated because you have a completely upside down judicial system right now that's politicized and weaponized against their political opponents.
Congressman, as a matter of fact, to your point, recent CNN poll shows that 76% of people think that politics did play a role in this indictment. But having said that, we're talking about the process right now and the lack of sort of the structure in the legal system, a two-tier justice system, if you will. And you watch as this will play out. You've got a judge that is openly against the president. You've got a DA that ran on going after him. You've got a jury pool here in New York that is, heavily skewed to the left. And, even though people outside know what's happening, to the point that you just made and to what you just described, he will be dragged through this process. It will cost him a lot of money. It could potentially take a toll on his health. These are the kinds of things that it's not just about the prosecution per se, but it's really an excruciatingly difficult process. Your thoughts on how he's sort of being dragged down this path right now?
Well, and think about, that's just what's happening now. Think of all the things that they've put him through over the years. Russia, the collusion hoax, impeachment 1, impeachment 2, all these other different investigations where they tried to go after him for criminal conduct, couldn't find anything. The DOJ didn't even want to take this case because there's not a case against the former president. And so they handed it off to a politicized Attorney General in New York to do it, in like you said, a very Democratic area. It's a sad day for our country when the justice system has been politicized. The justice system is not supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be equal and fair treatment to all, and that's not what we're having happening in our country right now. And you're going to see the Republican majority in the House start standing up to this. You've already heard from Jim Jordan and Comer. We're going to launch investigations into this so the American people can see it for just what it is.
Congressman, there's obviously politics all over this. It's saturated with politics. So let me ask you the political questions. The president has raised, former president has raised a lot of money coming out of this indictment. He has soared in the early polling we've seen on the Republican side. There's some sense that maybe Alvin Bragg thought this would be a political loss for former President Trump, but in some ways it seems to be a boon for him. What do you make of the emerging politics around all of this?
Well, you're right. The Democrats all along, which is why they did the impeachment hoaxes and had the impeachments in the House, knowing that it wouldn't go anywhere in the Senate. They wouldn't get the 60 votes to remove him because they thought that that would keep him from running again. They thought that they would be able to keep him from running for president again. And that's actually the opposite is occurring, because what it's doing politically is igniting the base, igniting Trump supporters. And the American people are smart enough to see what this is, that it's a politicization and weaponization of the justice system to go after their political enemy. They're seeing, and exactly what I was saying, you see other Democrats who break laws all the time and nothing happens to them, and then they're trying to find something to charge the president with. You're going to see the wagon circled around President Trump, and the numbers, all the polls I've seen, his numbers are going up by 10, 20 points because the people are going to rally behind the president just because of this.
You mentioned you were an attorney, a lawyer. We'd love to get some of your legal expertise as well. There's been a lot of to-do about a change in venue. From my sort of limited experience, we're not quite sure how you would try to get this case moved to Staten Island, but someone else made up a good point that the Constitution provides that we are allowed to be tried by a jury of our peers. Congressman, hang on there. We are seeing the president's motorcade pull up to the lower court here in Lower Manhattan, waiting for him to get out of the car. So we just want to stick on these photos for a minute before we get back to you. We are, again, waiting for the president to emerge and walk into that courthouse, you guys.
Yeah, this is a historic moment as somebody who has lived in the tri-state area basically and New York for so many years and watched President Trump. There he is, walking in.
Scaffolding in the way, typical New York. You can see him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
His back's to us, walking away.
I was just going to say, this really is having an impact on me watching this today because he plays such a role here in New York City. And then, you know, watching him, his rise all the way up to becoming the president of the United States and leaving this city behind and moving to Florida. And now to be brought back here today to face these criminal charges. It's very impactful.
Congressman, I was in the middle of asking you a question. If you'd be patient with us, stand by for one moment.
Sure.
We'd really appreciate it. In the meantime, I want to go back to Congressman Greg Steube, of course, who's been patiently standing by. Congressman, I was asking you a question about sort of the logistics and the legality of a change of venue. Your thoughts on if that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would do is file motions to dismiss. I mean, once we as the public get to see what these indictments say, you've got statute of limitations issues, you've got evidentiary issues, and I don't think they've probably met the burden legally to make the charges on these crimes. And so I would think that Trump's attorney is going to file motions to dismiss on as many of those that they legally have the basis to do that. Venue transfers are typically difficult to get in state court. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but when you have a judge who is already against you and it's that judge that's deciding whether to grant the venue change, those are going to be challenges that the legal team is going to face.
Well, that's the thing, Congressman. From my understanding, the judge has to grant the venue change. Even if he granted it to Staten Island, for example, he would still be the judge. He'd still be giving the jury instructions. He would still be, you know, presiding over the proceeding. Now, the Trump team could ask him to recuse himself. It doesn't seem like it would be something he'd be willing to do. I mean, it's a tough situation to be in. And you're right. I think that the Trump team today will begin its work asking for all those dismissals. But it seems like the cards are stacked against the former president.
Of course they are. You've got a democratically politicized weaponization of the attorney general there in Manhattan, and you've got a judge who is partisan. And it's just a sad day for America that it comes to this, where they're weaponizing the justice system against political enemies.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time today and providing your insight on this historic day as we literally are watching history unfold before our eyes.